Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are okay and ready for this afternoon session. I know after lunch and your previous meetings, it's long days what you are going to have all these days. So we hope we have tried to make the session this afternoon as dynamic as possible, with lots of some pitching sessions, short interventions, just really to showcase different examples. My name is Yvan Corbat. I'm not from the archival world. I work mostly on cultural creative industries, management, and European projects. And I've been supporting the partners of European digital treasures, and in particular the Spanish archives, for now almost 4 years, since the preparation first of the application from the European Commission till well, now it's implementation. The project has been running for more than 3 years now, I think, and it's a very wide project with a lot of activities, very ambitious one. I would invite you to I know that you have already heard about it and got information through ICARUS newsletters and so on. But I really invite you to follow it in the social media and on the website. It's full of useful information. At the end of my presentation, I've included a link, and you are going to receive copies of the presentations, I suppose. Otherwise, the link is too long. And it's a very wide project. Miguel Angel from the Spanish Archive is going to explain it briefly on Wednesday. There's a little session. Good luck, because I think he has like 15 minutes to explain over 20 activities that are taking place all across Europe. But this afternoon we are just going to discuss, to share with you a little part of this project, little but ambitious part, linked to new business models for European archives. It's part of the objectives of the project was to identify and try to test what we call new business models, new management model. Maybe sometimes the word business is not always so welcomed in public organizations. It sounds like orientated to make money. It's not only about this. It's mostly around new ways to implement new services or to manage organizations. And well, it is part of the objective of the project. So I'll introduce, maybe I'll try to do it a bit. I was supposed to have half an hour, but I'll try to do it in something like 20 minutes to introduce it, so that we can save some time and above all give more time to the partners of the project. So as I said, well, this is one of the objectives of the project, and within this, before the pandemic, like 2.5 years ago or almost 3 years ago, first of all, we said, okay, let's before trying to test new business models, let's first of all know what's the state of the art, what's the state of the play here at European level among European archives. So we drafted a little diagnosis and state-of-the-art report in order to have a clear map, a clear map of what is the profile, the general profile of European archives, both national ones and some regional or other kind of archives. And the second part was to benchmark practices out of the archival world in other cultural institutions that are maybe traditionally more used to implement new kind of activities like museum, libraries, and so on, in order to get inspired, and then to make sure that each partner can try to implement new activities, new services, open new windows to their day-to-day activities. I said the first activity was this, the state of the art. You don't see it on the top, okay, which was basically to gather primary data, not going to enter into detail about all the data collected. It's a lot of them, but I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you again, because I know that maybe many of ICARUS members have participated to this survey. We started with a survey to obtain, to get data about your profiles with an initial objective of getting information from 25 archives, and at the end we got 42 questionnaires filled in, so it was quite a lot of information, 21 at national levels and the rest from different kind of profiles. We also of course analyzed secondary data from existing sources, from ICARUS, from Archive Portal Europe, and so on, in order to map and to make a little SWOT analysis. The second part I mentioned was the selection of 33 inspiring, what we call inspiring good practices, that we divided into 4 categories: management, audience development, communication mostly, and even if we are talking a lot about innovation, we are talking about soft innovation. We are talking about not what is known as revolutionary innovation, but an innovation easier to integrate in your institution. So we included ICT, research and development, and cooperation, because we understood that for many organizations, sometimes you don't have the human resources necessary to really generate innovation. But yes, you do have the right profile, organizations and activities to incorporate innovation. So this is easier through collaborations, cooperations, public-private partnerships, and so on. So this was a kind of 4th activity. As I said, we generated a lot of data in the thanks to the questionnaires. I'm not going to present all of them. I'll pass them quite quickly, and I really invite you to download the report. It's available on the website of the project. But there was information about, of course, the general profiles, where the budget, where the money comes from, for what are the budget sources for the different archives, what are the legal structures, information about the distribution of staff costs, human resources, which percentage of your staff are archivists or historians or administrations, managerial, and so on. We also look at it from the gender perspective, and here I would like to highlight that you are probably the only subsector of the cultural creative industries where there is no gender gap, or there is a positive gender gap, because according to the information gathered, and this is the graph you can see down, there are more women than men working in your sector, even in management position, because we can discover this similar data in other sectors, such as the book industry, or even archaeology. In archaeology, there are more women than men, which is something that surprises, the data that surprises sometimes. But here, all the heads, or most of the heads of the delegations of archaeology and so on are men. There is a glass roof there, a glass ceiling, not in the sector, which is something very positive actually, and we are happily surprised to see it. So we analyzed a bit of human resources and fields of interest, which was very important also to see what are your interests in order to identify what is your position towards the incorporation of new issues. Because there we confirmed, it's not discovery, it's a confirmation by data that the main fields of interest will turn around collection of data, collecting data, I mean, and eventually digitization of them and access for professionals. But many other kind of activities, maybe more innovative, are not around the priorities. As I said, just to invite you to download the the report. I'm passing it relatively quickly. We managed to through this collection of data to see what kind of, according to the results, what percentage of total holdings are digitized. So, because we know that you have been investing a lot of money and human resources in the last 20 years digitizing, and every time we were discussing, and as a newcomer to this world, I didn't know anything about the archival professions and activities. I didn't know much about them. And I in all the conversations, people were always talking about digitization and so on. It's kind of the priority, what everybody wanted money to digitize. When we started to prepare this project, people were saying, we want money to digitize. And we had to say, no, it's impossible. The European Commission is not going to finance digitization of our archives, not this program, it's not the objectives. So after 20 years of digitization process, it's well, only between 4 and 3% are digitized. There's still a lot, no? And of them, around 14–18% are described. So here it's where probably artificial intelligence might change and help, particularly in the description. And in the second part of these afternoon sessions, we'll have a presentation about these kind of activities. We also intended to know the age of the records that were digitized. So it was obviously the oldest ones. Most of them are digitized, and most of them, at least half of them, according to this data. No, a percentage. The first graph, the long one on the top, are documents over 500 years old, and there around half of them have been digitized. But when you come closer to the 20th century in particular, there are much more documents and obviously much less digitized. These are data that you already know, probably you work on it on a day-to-day basis, but it was a confirmation to us, above all, to justify necessary changes also, or necessary investments. We also check the origins of the documents, and we intended to get information about the number of users and visitors, both digital visitors and on-site visitors, and to try to know the profiles of the consumers, right? Which is actually, according to this data, historians or archivists or teachers are not the higher level. There are much more students or just unknown or other. I think the answer is unknown. Basically, we don't know. There is no audience development strategy in many archives. In fact, it was one of the questions. Here we have it. We asked if you have an audience development strategy, and well, a huge, large majority said no. Okay. Priorities of profiles, etc., etc. Okay. This was an average number of records length per year, which are not so high. The number of records length per year, and it's a way also to cooperate and to expand horizons. Okay. Here it was yeah, again global interest in the following trends and technologies, and we see that 70% will be talking about digitization, while other trends like gaming, virtual reality, and so on are just not priorities, definitely, or of less interest. They're starting. There, if you download the document, you'll see many other data. It's just a very quick selection, and you'll see a kind of general profile of what are the European archives, both at national and local levels. And this helps us to draft. I don't know if you can read it here. if it's big enough to read it, some brief SWOT analysis to identify what are the strengths and weaknesses and so on. It's a confirmation also of data again, but this brings us to the second part, to the identification of new practices. I'm not going to read all of them, but if we go to opportunities, it's really linked to the kind of good practices we intended to identify and to the kind of new practices that people from the partners are trying to implement right now. Increase public-private collaborations and partnerships in many ways. Of course, creation of new services and related incomes. To try to increase the efforts on new target audiences. We say there is no audience strategies. There are needs to work with new audiences, with younger generations, older generations, etc., etc. And these are part of the opportunities, and also the major use of course, new technologies. I know you have been discussing, and you are discussing it in many workshops, no? But a better use of smart data and other kind of technologies. So it helps us to look for innovation. There are lots of types of innovation, and we didn't want to enter into all these too complex parts. So we really made it a bit easier. As I said, we divided the identification of good practices in different kind of categories. The first one was, as I said, managerial good practices. The second one was linked to audience development, the third one to communication, and the last one to ICT technologies and cooperation. Okay, these are names, all these names of these good practices, examples, again, coming from other, in many cases, in most of the cases, coming from other institutions out of archives, and there are specific fiches with small information and linked on all of them to know what they've done. Okay, and you can discover it in the document. And now I'm just going down to the to the conclusions of these good practices. These examples turned around all these activities: corporate social responsibility or educational projects, social projects, engagement, which is key importance. By engagement, again, we are talking about audience development, the generation of incomes, as we identified previously. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's over 90% of the budget of archives come from public funds. All of them, all of you are facing the difficulties, crises, and so on, risk of reduction of the budget or public sources. So, okay, you have to diversify the sources of funding, and this is where we are looking for some solutions. Diversification of services, communication of key importance, and they're all interlinked, and again, cooperation. So if going just one by one through these activities, these are just, well, obvious examples that we had identified and where we discussed within the project among the partners of possibilities to incorporate these kind of activities. Some of them were already doing it, of course. Nothing is new. We are not inventing here the wheel or Coca-Cola, right? This might be obvious, but it's not always on the day-to-day list, wish list, or to-do list of people, because the day-to-day is, as you know, different. No, all the obligations linked to the conservation of the archives and their somehow protection and so on. So working with new target audiences, youth people, what is identified here as the silver economy, elderly people with different kind of profiles, of course, active, fragile, and dependent people. It's possible to make, to organize activities with all these profiles. Working with accessibility, improving accessibility of the archives for dependent people, as this is being done, and it's compulsory in many public buildings. It's not only in the buildings, it's also on the websites and so on, either for people having any kind of handicaps, I would say. Working with people of risk of social exclusions, with refugees, with migrants and so on, and also working with people living in remote areas, in rural areas, for example, no, which is a priority for many of our countries. As far as engagement is concerned, it's also all linked with the previous ones, probably. We identified also many good examples of like club of friends or associations, local associations around museums, and around, in some cases, it exists around of historians, archivists, students, not only professional ones. It can be non-professional ones. And this can, of course, contribute to consolidate audience, consolidate public, to consolidate communication, but also to consolidate incomes in some cases. Crowdsourcing activities. This will have a specific example later on from Hungary of crowdsourcing activities that are being implemented in the framework of the project. And yeah, all the co-participation and co-creation processes being more fun. I mean, to generate fun experience. Work with, again, game, 3D modeling, emotion mapping, all this kind of stuff that mostly, well, libraries, museums, and so on are working on it very hardly, and that is starting to enter in the archives. As far as income generation is concerned, we mostly talked about merchandising products, but we say, okay, we have to be very careful here. And in fact, I mean, within the project, there has been some artistic residencies of industrial and graphic designers who had designed, maybe you have seen it, lots of very nice products, very, very, very beautiful products inspired by archives. It was really to test and to see that we can do something different than just a catalog, a book, or a map. Okay, I think here we've got an umbrella over there, a beautiful one from Norway that we can show maybe after. And yeah, but we have to be careful here. Of course, if we are talking about selling merchandising products, the related incomes and costs, you really need a business plan. You have to be very careful, but it does generate small incomes to many cultural institutions, and it could in many places. Of course, it depends on the possibilities, number of visitors you might have, or digital visitors if they are going to buy it online. And we'll have another examples after from Portugal as well, where their online shop provides not only archives, but also some of their merchandising product, if I'm not wrong, right, Jose? And crowdfunding, we are not to be mistaken with crowdfunding campaigns, which is something very common now in cultural creative industries to generate small incomes. You'll see it in many, from small bands to festivals to exhibitions and so on, that promote crowdfunding campaigns in order to generate usually between 3,000 and 30,000 euros. That's quite a standard amount. So I know some projects that are generating now over 100,000 euros through crowdfunding. So it can be more ambitious. And of course, private sponsorships, for example, for exhibitions. This is something that is to be recommended. As far as the diversification of services or offer are concerned, here, this is very strongly interlinked to, again, audience development and visibility in many cases. When it comes to services that are maybe, or activities, if it's not services, out of your day-to-day obligations, like, I mean, when these activities are there's an example here, the yoga sessions of yoga in Pompidou Center here in Paris. Okay, this is obviously not directly to promote some paintings or sculptures, but yes, after the sessions of yoga, they do organize some visits to the museum, and they manage to attract or intend to attract new audiences. And if you do a session of yoga in the Pompidou, you can do a session of yoga in any nice buildings of yours, right? Why not? But again, this is important to have in mind the added value of this kind of activities, especially towards communication and toward the visibility of the archives, of the institutions promoting it. It's a question of being in the map sometimes. You know the rules of the games. If you've got more visibility, you'll get more institutional support and get more budgets as well. So everything is important. Communications, well, we discuss obviously a lot, social media, stressing the importance of managing them very professionally, having either in-house or outsourced or both community managers. But it's very important if we want to tackle this issue to have a clear plan, a clear provisions. And again, other activities like augmented virtual reality devices and so on, they help to promote the visibility. And the last but not least, cooperation and technological transfer. What we saw, again, is it's important to incorporate existing knowledge, especially when you are not an ICT institution. You use ICT. ICT might help you. So you need to collaborate with either companies who are developing solutions and or universities or research centers that can help you to better incorporate whatever trends or solutions is in the air. Okay, when we are talking about artificial intelligence, we are talking about the management of smart data, of big data, etc., blockchain. Okay, you need friends to go through these kind of adventures. If you try by your own, you might fail because it's going to become too complex or too expensive. So it's very important to incorporate also technologies or solutions that have been developed in different projects. The European Union has invested a lot of money supporting different kind of similar research and development projects, especially through Horizon programs. So here it's important to transfer, capitalize this kind of issue, take into account these so-called buyout, bring your own device trends. So people, especially, I mean, it's a post-COVID trend, people will go and visit your places with their own device. So they need solutions to fully use them, etc., etc. Okay. So as I said, all these little research or thoughts are downloadables on the website of the project. So I really invite you to download them. But these were just inspiring stories. It was just in order to shake a bit the minds of people. And on this basis, further to having seen that it's possible because it's being done, why don't we do it as well in our archives? The 5 archival institutions of the national ones participating in this project started to identify what can we do at ourselves within our archives. What kind of new solutions can we implement? Soft innovation again. We are not talking about something revolutionary. Most of them, all of you, I think, are public institutions. So with also the limits, staff resources and so on. And all of them have identified between 3-4 new kind of activities, new kind of services, new kind of internal debate, I would say, and started to implement them from last year and are currently working on this. So this afternoon, right now, actually, we are going to hear about just 5 stories. We have selected 5 different topics of something similar to what I said, but we are not talking about libraries or museums or whatever, but of different kind of national archives.